Okay, what we're talking about today is Churchianity, and we'll learn what Churchianity is. The purpose of this video, at the beginning, I'd like to just say that there's a friend, or at least someone I know, who's passed on now, but who I consider a friend, although I really didn't know him very well. I listened to a lot of the CDs and met with him and talked to him on numerous occasions. Anyways, his name is Rice McLeod, and he had this little thing that he said. He said that the biggest problem in this world is third parties. And, if you think about it, all bar members are third parties. They go into court and they say this guy did this and this guy did that, and they don't have any first-hand knowledge of anything. And so he's 100% right when he says that the biggest problem in this world is third parties. And then he went on to say, and so why on earth would you want some third-party preacher involved in your relationship with God? And so I guess what I'm saying is that I don't want anybody to think that I'm not Christian. Quite frankly, I do consider myself to be Christian. But again, why on earth would I want some third-party preacher involved in my relationship with God? And this video is called Churchianity because it's about most of the fact that most churches are not Christian. They really have no idea what it means to be Christian. They're actually satanic, and it's really all a mechanism of control. I would like to say that we're going to be talking about the Vatican and how satanic the Vatican is, and I want everybody to understand that I have many wonderful friends who happen to be Catholic, and many of them are actually feeding me this information. And history is full of examples of the Vatican exterminating whole communities for heresy, and this presentation should not be taken to reflect anything negative on anyone who happens to be Catholic. There's many people who are just the most wonderful people in the world that happen to be Catholic. In some cases, it's friends who happen to be Catholic that are providing me this information, and this is no different than the people. It's friends of mine that are Jewish that happen to be providing me information about the bankster thieves. Okay, and so with these people that are this New World Order crowd, they do divide and conquer. Okay, and so if we allow ourselves to go and pick on one group or another, then we're playing right into their hands, because that's exactly what they do, is divide and conquer. And so we cannot pick one group or another. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care anything. And it's all based on individuals. This New World Order crowd, they're individuals and they're criminals, and they can't allow us to divert. The first thing they want to do is divert attention away from themselves by pointing the finger at one group or another group, and we can't allow that to happen, because that's playing right into their hands. And so this is certainly not about one group or another group, other than the Vatican itself, which happens to be satanic. This presentation is also called Churchianity because most so-called churches are not Christian and have no idea what it means to be Christian. Most churches are interested in making money and trumpeting the party line. Most churches are actually satanic. They teach half-truths and falsehoods. They are more interested in rituals than what is right or wrong, and they're most interested in money. And this is actually taken from 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 to 5 and 7. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. And I would just like to say here that America's #1 export is entertainment. And gee, that sounds like pleasure, and we're a hedonistic society. And then going on in verse 5, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. And then verse 7 it says, and never learning and never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. And so America was actually intended to be a Christian nation. The U.S. Supreme Court has depictions of the great lawgiver Moses and the Ten Commandments. There are U.S. Supreme Court cases that talk about Christianity. This is one of them. This is a religious people. This is historically true. From the discovery of this continent to the present hour, there's a single voice making this affirmation. These are not individual sayings, declarations of private persons. They are organic utterances. They speak the voice of the entire people. These and many other matters which might be noticed add a volume of unofficial declarations to the mass of organic utterances that this is a Christian nation. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, Church of the Holy Trinity versus U.S. Declaration of Independence talks about our Creator. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The U.S. Constitution, we the people do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And ordination is a Christian religious ceremony. Sections 4 and 14 of Article 7 in the Constitution of Mississippi. No person who denies the being of a god or a future state of rewards and punishments shall hold any office in the civil department of this state, religious morality and knowledge being necessary to good government. The preservation of liberty and the happiness of mankind, schools, and the means of education shall forever be encouraged in this state. And this is Article 22 of the Constitution of Delaware. This is actually an oath of office. IAB do profess faith in God the Father and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore, and do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures, the Old and New Testament, to be given by divine inspiration. Updegraft versus Commonwealth. Christianity, general Christianity, is and always has been a part of the common law of Pennsylvania. Not Christianity with an established church and tithes and spiritual courts, but Christianity with liberty of conscience to all men. And so what they're saying in this case, and this is the way Christianity was considered in America, was America was intended to be Christian, but they weren't intended to be associated with any one church like in England. And we'll go into stuff in this presentation about why what was going on in England and why the people here didn't want to have anything to do with that. And so they didn't want to be associated with any particular church. They just wanted everybody to be generally Christian. This is Vidal versus Gerard's Executors, the U.S. Supreme Court again. It is also said and truly that the Christian religion is a part of the common law of Pennsylvania. Constitution of Illinois. We, the people of the state of Illinois, grateful to Almighty God for the civil, political, and religious liberty which he has so long permitted us to enjoy, and looking to him for a blessing upon our endeavors to secure and transmit the same unimpaired to succeeding generations. Well, I'd say they failed with that. Carlisle versus United States, U.S. Supreme Court again. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory, and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. And so the important thing here is they're talking about strangers, and that is actually taken from the Bible. And this is Leviticus 19:34, and it's actually not just one place. It's all throughout the Bible they talk about strangers. But a stranger that dwelleth among you shall be one unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So they're talking about two classes of citizens there, strangers and those born among you. And we're going to talk about that more in depth in the citizenship presentation that's going to be coming up. And so so strangers, the reason they were enslaved in Israel is because they were strangers. Most churches that call themselves Christians aren't. When George Bush Jr. took office, the IRS padlocked the church doors of a Southern Baptist temple in Indianapolis, Indiana. And all churches are automatically tax exempt. This is taken from IRS publication 557. Tax exempt status for your organization, and on page 25, and this is it's an application for exemption under 501c3 the Internal Revenue Code. So it says churches, although a church is integrated auxiliaries or a convention or association of churches, is not required to file Form 1023 to be exempt from federal income tax or to receive tax-deductible contributions. The organization may find it advantageous to obtain recognition of the exemption. So churches are automatically tax exempt. They don't need to apply for anything. They're automatically tax exempt. When a church makes application for 501c3 status, they cease to be a church and they become a tax exempt organization. That includes the responsibility to be careful what they say about the government. That's why the Southern Baptist Temple in Indianapolis was padlocked soon after George Bush Jr. took office. It's called the Johnson Amendment because it was President Johnson that did it. Once a church makes application for 501c3 status, they cease to be a church. a 501c3 church is not a church, but is a tax-exempt organization. As a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, they are prohibited from speaking in opposition to the government, and any organization that breaks this rule will be shut down, like the Indianapolis Southern Baptist Temple that was padlocked by when George Bush Jr. First took office. And it's interesting to note he claimed to be Christian, and obviously that was just a big charade. Any church that has 501c3 status is not Christian because they cannot speak the truth. And this is Ezekiel 34:2, 8, and 10. And thus saith the Lord God unto the shepherds, woe be to the shepherds of Israel that do feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flocks? As I live, saith the Lord God, surely because my flock became a prey, and my flock became meat for every beast of the field, because there was no shepherd, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I am against the shepherds, and I will require my flock at their hand. Okay, and so these churches that have this 501c3 status, you need to be aware that you're going to be held accountable. And I'm looking forward to it. A tax-exempt organization is a person, and that is why they can shut them down if they do not toe the line. The IRS is owned and operated by the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund is owned by the World Bank. The World Bank is part of the United Nations, and all of these organizations operate under Roman law. The church that has 501c3 status is literally in a contract with the devil. If the tax-exempt organization is not allowed to speak all of the truth, and they're allowed to speak only part of the truth is a half-truth, part of the truth is a fraud. Quote, fraud may be committed by a failure to speak when a duty of speaking is imposed as much as by speaking falsely, unquote. And that's the Arizona court case. Black's Fifth Law Dictionary, 5th edition, says fraud and an intentional perversion of truth for the purpose of inducing another into reliance upon it, in part to part with some valuable thing belonging to him or to surrender a legal right. Well, gee, those churches are busy passing that plate around, so they certainly want you to part with something valuable. Another Arizona court case, when one conveys a false impression by disclosure of some facts and the concealment of others, such concealment is in effect a false representation that what is disclosed is the whole truth. And God does not respect our fictitious entities. And so 2 Samuel 14 and 14, and neither does God respect any person. Deuteronomy 10 and 17, for the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, a great God, a mighty and terrible, which regardeth not persons. For there is, Romans 2 and 11, for there is no respect of persons with God. So why would God respect our fictitious entities? Okay, and so of course, I mean, God knows who you are, and God knows that if you're some owner of some fictitious entity, He knows that you're the one that's responsible. You cannot claim ignorance or deniability because you happen to have some corporation that's doing it when it's really you. Okay, and so God is going to hold you responsible, and everybody that listens to this needs to understand that they cannot hide behind some fictitious entity. And so a tax-exempt organization is not allowed to speak about the two classes of citizens that have always been here, and they've not allowed to speak in opposition to anything that the government does. There are no jails at common law. All jails are private. In England, the Archbishop of Canterbury owns all the prisons. Jail is a benefit because common law penalties can be very severe. There are people who waive the benefit. This is Holthouse, a New Law Dictionary, 1850 edition, a pecuniary cause. Why do you think they have you in jail? It's because of a pecuniary cause, such as arise either from withholding ecclesiastical dues or doing or neglecting some act relating to the church whereby some damage accrues to the plaintiff towards obtaining satisfaction for which he is permitted to institute a suit in a spiritual court. Such, for instance, are the subtraction withholding of tithes from the parson or vicar, the non-payment of ecclesiastical dues to the clergy. Okay, and that's Blackstone's Book 3 and Blackstone's commentaries. And so jails, a penance. Why do you think they call a penitentiary, call it that? It's because you're doing penance as a punishment imposed for a crime by ecclesiastical laws. That's all these ecclesiastical laws. All these people in jail are in there by ecclesiastical laws. It's an acknowledgement of offense. Penance may be changed into a sum of money, okay? So think about it. For your money, we'll forgive you. Everything's for sale. To be applied for pious uses, yeah, right, so they can go and hire some terrorists to make some war on you. And that's actually found in Book 3 of the Institutes on the Laws of England, and that's cited in Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. Another cite from Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, penalty of bonds. If a man brings an action of debt upon a bond for performance of covenant, the plaintiff shall recover the whole penalty of his bond, because in debt the judgment must be according to the demand. Okay, so think about it. That's what they're doing, is they're creating this fictitious debt. And once they do that, it's all contingent upon this fictitious entity, and they create this fictitious debt, and then they railroad you. And that's exactly what's going on in these kangaroo courts. Penitentiary has meant a penitent and an ordainer of penances, a place for penitents. And that's Anderson's Law Dictionary, 1889 edition. Originally in colonial days, the schools were set up so the children could be taught to read so they could read the Bible. Because the government's bankrupt, it's now owned and operated by the Vatican, and that is why they have removed the Bible from the schools, from the courts, because the Vatican is satanic. There's lots of YouTube videos that go through and explain this. The Exempt Organization is a satanic Luciferian organization. It teaches half-truths, it teaches lies, it does not teach all of the truth. And if you cannot say all of the truth, then by definition, it's a half a truth. The government went bankrupt 3 times and now is owned and operated by our enemies. Watch the Bankster Thieves videos 1 and 2, the bankrupt corporate so-called governments video, watch the We're Under Martial Law We Rule video, and watch the Canada Border Pigs and their bought and paid for judges playlist. This is taken from the Treaty of Tripoli in Article 11, dated the 4th of November, 1796. And as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, it has, and then it goes on. And so they're basically, it has in itself no character or enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of the Muslims, okay, Muslims. And so what they're essentially saying here, if you think about it, is that there's few, if any, accidents. That's what I am saying, okay, because it was never intended. It's been, think about it. The Articles of Confederation. I wonder if I do have that here. This is Article 11, Articles of Confederation, July 9, 1778. It says, Canada ceding to this confederation and adjoining to the measures of the United States shall be admitted into and entitled to all the advantages of this union, but no other colony shall be admitted into the same unless such admission be agreed to by 9 states. Okay? And then, at that time, think about it. At that time, Canada did not exist. Okay? Canada didn't exist until 1867. And so, at that time, Canada did not exist. So what's up with that, boys and girls? It's all planned from the beginning. It's been planned, you know, at least for the last couple hundred years, and probably much longer. This is the World Council of Churches website. The WCC brings together 349 churches, denominations, and church fellowships in more than 110 countries and territories throughout the world, representing over 560 million Christians, and including most of the world's Orthodox churches, scores of Anglican, Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, and Reformed churches, as well as many United Independent churches, while the bulk of the WCC's founding churches were European, North American. Today, most member churches are in Africa, Asia, Caribbean, Latin America, and the Middle East and the Pacific. And so, again, so this World Council of Churches basically regulates all the churches. And this is their website. And the World Council of Churches comes from the Vatican. And according to Wikipedia, the WCC was created in 1948 when the Faith and Order movement and the Life and Work movement organizations were merged, and the Vatican was part of it. And this is a quote from their website. Faith and Order enjoys full membership and participation of several other churches who are not members of the World Council of Churches, among them the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, so they're being deceptive. Okay, they don't want you to know they're involved in this. Article 10 of the 1933 Concordat with Hitler. Okay, it says the wearing of clerical dress or of a religious habit by lay people is liable to the same penalty by the state as the misuse of a military uniform. Okay, and so therefore a clerical dress, a religious habit, is a military uniform. Think about it. Okay, and this was Article 1933 Concordat with Hitler, between them and the Vatican, but Canada and the United States and a whole bunch of other countries have bought into this 1933 Concordat. And this is the Lateran Pact. the sovereignty and exclusive jurisdiction over the Vatican City, which Italy recognizes as appertaining to the Holy See, forbid any intervention thereon on the part of the Italian government, or that any authority other than that of the Holy See shall be there acknowledged. Okay, and so that was an agreement between the Lateran Pact, was between the Vatican City and the Italian government, and it basically is what made the Vatican an independent nation. And all of the nations of the world, or not all of them, but a bunch of them, including Canada and the United States, have bought onto that. And so basically, if you read this Lateran Pact, Italy agrees to protect the Vatican, and Canada's agreed to protect the Vatican, and so has the United States agreed to protect the Vatican. Canada signed on to the Lateran Pact, and many other countries have signed on to the Lateran Pact. Because of the bankruptcy, the government's owned and operated by Satan, literally. They've taken prayer out of the schools, they've taken God out of the schools, they've taken God out of the courts. There are Christian churches out there, but they're not tax-exempt organization, and that excludes 99% of the so-called churches out there. The bent crucifix is a sinister symbol used by Satanists in the 6th century that had been revived at the time of Vatican II. This was a bent or broken cross in which displayed a repulsive and distorted figure of the Messiah, which the black magicians and sorcerers in the Middle Ages had made use to represent the biblical term mark of the beast. Yet not only Paul VI, but his successors, the two John Pauls, carried that object and held it up to be revered by crowds who had not the slightest idea that it stood for the false Messiah. And this, on page 56 of Compton, prints a picture of the current Pope, John Paul II, holding this bent and broken cross, just as we have sown, okay? And so if you go to this website that's here, and this is the picture, and that's the bent cross. And notice that little grin he's got on his face. And so this is what it's all about, okay? It's all satanic. Citation: a summons to appear applied particularly to process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of civil and canon law by citation and libel. Okay, this is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Citation: a summons to appear applied particularly in process and spiritual court. Ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of civil and canon law. So that's Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. Citation: this is Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition. This is also the name of the process used in English ecclesiastical probate and divorce courts to call the defendant or respondent before them. Okay, and that's actually a cite from Blackstone's commentaries. And so, so a citation, this is Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1897 edition. The act which a person is summoned, okay, so we're talking a summons here too, or cited in the ecclesiastical law. The citation is the beginning and foundation of the whole cause. The process issued in courts of probate and admiralty courts. It is usually the original process name proceeding were used, and is in that respect analogous to the writ of capias, okay? And it's interesting to note that they use citations in Texas, and if they issue a warrant, it's really not a warrant, it's a capias, or summons at law, and the subpoena in chancery. And so this is Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1897 edition. This is actually, I filed a lawsuit in Texas, and this is what the clerk made up. And you notice the red line up at the top, that's where it says it's a citation. And so this is what's going on. And this is like in Texas in particular. I mean, all proceedings are by citation. And so they're all Vatican religious ecclesiastical courts, and it's all coming from the Vatican. Courts ecclesiastical are those courts which are held by the king's authority as supreme governor of the church for matters which chiefly concern religion, and as laws and constitutions whereby the Church of England is governed. Diverse and memorial, diverse are one, diverse customs, our own provincial constitutions, and the canons made in convocations, especially those in the year 1603. The jurisdiction of the courts is voluntary or contentious. The voluntary is merely concerned in doing what no one opposes or granting dispensations, licenses. Okay, so again, this is all admiralty. This is all coming from the Vatican. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Courts ecclesiastical, the proceedings in ecclesiastical courts according to the civil and canon law by citation, libel, the answer upon oath, proof by witnesses, and presumptions, okay? It's all color of law. It's all a fraud. And after sentence, by excommunication if the sentence is disliked by appeal. Okay, the appeals. The reason they do appeals, the appeal courts have been set up, is to make the Vatican happy. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Courts ecclesiastical, the great court of appeal in all ecclesiastical causes to the Privy Council. And the underlined part, it says that the civil and canon laws were first imported into England to obviate, but in a few years after, to obviate this growing practice, the Constitution. So they obviously, what happened is there was they were creating these ecclesiastical courts and railroading people, and the people rose up in rebellion, and so then they made the constitutions at Clarendon, and I'm not sure which ones those are. But it's just goes around and around again, time and time again. And if you watch my my other videos, you'll see how it just keeps coming back around. These are now principal courts of ecclesiastical jurisdiction, none of which are allowed to be courts of record. Okay, it's a kangaroo court. It's admiralty. It's a kangaroo court. Administrator, a person authorized to manage and distribute the estate of an intestate, a testator who has no executor. Administrators are officers of the ordinary. Ordinary is one of the English. It's a church actually in England. And their title and authority are derived exclusively from the ecclesiastical judge. Okay, this is all coming from the Vatican. And the underlined part at the bottom required the ordinary to appoint next of kin and relations by blood of the deceased. And so that's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1883 edition. Articulus, an article or complaint exhibited by way of libel in a court Christian. Okay, so libel is an admiralty proceeding, and an admiralty proceeding is under the Vatican. It's all under canon law or ecclesiastical law. Sometimes the religious bound themselves to obey the ordinary, and that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Summoners. Summoners, petty officers that cite and warn men to appear in court. Okay, so when they summons, the summons again is all tied into the Vatican and this satanic religious ceremony that's going on. Anyways, the summoners were properly apparitors who warned in delinquents at a certain time and place to answer any charge or complaint exhibited against them, and in citations from a superior court. Okay, so it's a citation. Again, it's the summoners. That's all tied in to this ecclesiastical courts. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. A libel. Admiralty practice, to proceed against by filing a libel, to seize under admiralty process at the commencement of a suit. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Excommunication, an ecclesiastical censure, divided into greater and lesser, and so that's talking about excommunication. And the important stuff about this I want to get into here later. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. There's some more stuff on excommunication. An excommunicated person was disabled to do any act. He could not serve upon juries, nor be a witness in any court, nor bring an action, nor either real or personal, to recover lands or money due him. The votes of persons excommunicated have been frequently objected to, and in some cases persons incurred excommunications ipso facto by act of Parliament, and the conviction, but they were first to be convicted of the offense by law, and the conviction transmitted to the ordinary, a religious court. So can't you see why the founding fathers didn't want anything to do with the central church? Because this is the kind of garbage they were doing. They would sit there and play there, have their little kangaroo court, and if you didn't go along with it, they'd excommunicate you, and you couldn't do anything. You couldn't, and then they'd just go ahead and abuse you and assault you and kidnap you, and you couldn't get a remedy, and the whole nine yards. And it's all coming from the Vatican. This is the kind of people they are. They're just the lowest form of life there is, and the sooner they're off the face of this planet, the better. Excommunication, an ecclesiastical censure, and this is Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. Excommunication, this is more of the Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, so it's continued. Okay, this excommunication is generally for contempt and not appearing or obeying a decree. And so, and other respects, the causes of it are many, and for matters of heresy, refusing to receive the sacrament or to come to church. And then it goes on, it says, and thereupon the party may be taken and imprisoned by virtue of a writ significat or KBS excommunication, and is to remain in prison until he submits. And so they They go and kidnap you and drag you into their commercial jail until you submit to their kangaroo court. That's exactly what's going on. And this is all coming from the Vatican. Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. It's an inquisition, the court of the ordinary, an American law court which has jurisdiction of probate wills and regulation of management of decedents' estates. Such courts exist in Georgia, New Jersey, South Carolina, and Texas. And I don't know of any ordinary court in Texas, but certainly all of the courts proceed in this ecclesiastical law in Texas. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Impostors, those who falsely pretend an extraordinary commission from heaven or terrify and abuse people with false denunciations of judgment. That's exactly what's going on. These whores going, they're actually clerks is what they are. They don't have a shred of immunity, and they're going and conspiring with the prosecutor in their kangaroo court, which is really not a court, and they're railroading people, and that's exactly what's going on. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. An impostor, one who pretends to be someone else to deceive others, especially receive the benefits of a negotiable instrument. Well, how do you think they get paid? Federal Reserve notes are negotiable instruments, so are Bank of Canada notes or Bank of England notes, or a check. I don't care what you want to call it, what it is. It's going to be a negotiable instrument. I guarantee you they're not getting paid in gold or silver coin. Inquisition. This is exactly what's going on. It's been going on for thousands of years. Inquisition is one way of proceeding in ecclesiastical courts. This is the same thing that went on with the Spanish Inquisition, where thousands were murdered so the Vatican can complete their commercial transactions and steal their property. I was in the Louvre in Paris, and there's hundreds of paintings in there that talk about this, that show this, that display the blood in the Inquisition and the stuff that they were doing. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Libel in spiritual court, if upon a libel in the ecclesiastical manner the defendant made a surmise to have a prohibition, the libel is used in ecclesiastical proceedings. Okay, this is Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. A libel has been defined to be the plaintiff's petition or allegation made and exhibited in judicial process with some solemnity of law. It is also said to be a short and well-ordered writing, setting forth in a clear manner, as well to the judge as the defendant, the plaintiff's or accuser's intention and judgment. It is written statement by a plaintiff of his cause of action and of the relief he seeks to obtain in the suit. And that's cited from Law's Ecclesiastical Law. And so this is all coming from the Vatican. And order takers. Mark Passio is a former Satanist priest who has some YouTube videos about natural law. They're great videos. I encourage everybody to watch them. All of the atrocities, one of the things he says is all of the atrocities in the histories were committed by order takers. Some of the pillars of Satanism are forms of mind control, or survival is the highest law of Satanism. Moral relativism, no such thing as right or wrong, we just make it up. And that's exactly what goes on with these satanic churches that have this 501c3 status. They just make it up as they go along, and they stay off of certain topics. Social Darwinism. Certain classes of people think they're most fit to rule, postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless. Ultimate responsibility is self-preservation. Eugenics. The elite determines who lives and dies. Order followers, responsible for all the atrocities in history, just follow orders without thinking about whether it's a lawful order or not. They're willing slaves. Moral relativism. 2/3 of the people believe in moral relativism. In Mark's video, he talks about how he went and talked to his own grandmother, and he pointed out that the pillars of Satanism, and he says, "You're a Satanist," and she says, "Yeah, I guess I am." And so I'll tell you, if somebody said that to me, I'd do a serious reevaluation of my what I was thinking and doing. Anyways, truth is relative. Under moral relativism, truth is relative. It's what we make up today. An order taker, someone who is too stupid to know when they're receiving an unlawful command or not, cannot think for themselves, but needs someone to tell them what to do, as described by Mark Passio in his YouTube videos on natural law. Mark Passio rightly says that all the atrocities in history were committed by order takers in his YouTube profile. And this is his YouTube profile, and I encourage everybody to go there because he's got some great stuff on there. World War II war crimes tribunals. All the Nazis claimed they were following orders, and they either suffered death by hanging or spent the rest of their life in jail. These are examples of order takers, and some of them are still hunted to this day. The My Lai massacre. This is the U.S. did in Vietnam, and those soldiers were convicted of murder. And the Amistad's a case before the Civil War, where there's a ship. Go to the U.S. Supreme Court. There's a U.S. versus Amistad, and what happened was there was a slave ship that the slaves took over the ship, and they killed all of their captors except for one. And they said, take us back to Africa, because they didn't know how to sail, how to navigate in the water, in the ocean. And so the guy that they told him they didn't kill, he went and sailed in circles off the coast of Virginia. And what he did was he sailed in circles. Yeah, right. Anyway, so until the U.S. Navy found him. And then the U.S. Navy went and they took him back to and put him on trial. And the end result was there was two arguments. The first argument is that they're a slave, they're property, they're no different than a dog or a cat, and they can't be convicted of murder. And they said otherwise they're free men and they have every right to do what they did. And it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the government tried to manipulate it as much as they could. And the end result was that the U.S. Supreme Court said they're free men and they have every right to do what they did, and sent them back to Africa. These judicial whores intend that they're brain-dead, idiot, low-intelligence, hired thugs assault people and kidnap people and falsely imprison people because it is so good for business. If anyone has any doubt about that, check out Jordan versus City of New London, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. People are the ones who are really in control, not a gang of Vatican judicial whores selling their justice, not their hired thugs, not the Canada border pigs, and even a peace officer can do nothing that we ourselves cannot do. What can we do? We can refuse to participate in their de facto system. We can educate ourselves about what common law jury is and what the law of the land is. We can educate ourselves so we know when our rights are being violated. We can educate our public servants, because many of them do not know any more than we do. We can educate other people by circulating this video and any other way possible. We can demand a common law jury of our peers. We can work with our friends and neighbors to reestablish our common law juries and our common law lawful de jure courts. We can work with our friends and neighbors to get the United Nations out of America and Canada and anywhere that wants to be free. The United Nations is owned and operated by the bankster thieves and their Vatican handlers. Upcoming events, color of law, fire the United Nations judicial whores in Texas, City of Fort Worth pigs, City of Grand Prairie pigs, how to do the habeas corpus, citizenship.